So, welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here today and talking to us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your passion.
My name is Sarah Adams. I'm better known on social media as Mom Uncharted. And I discuss the parental state of sharenting online and child exploitation and just keeping kids safe. And it all stemmed from basically what I was seeing online a few years ago. Like many people, especially during the pandemic, we all went online more. And as I spent more time there, I just started to feel very uncomfortable with the amount of images and information people were sharing about their children. I felt that as a stranger, I shouldn't have this intimate insight into these children's lives. And it started to make me feel very uncomfortable. And as I sat on it for weeks and months and talked to friends and family about it, they all seemed to think that, you know what, like you're onto something. And like I've never thought about it like that. And I wonder if other people think about it like that. And looking for a creative outlet in the midst of a pandemic with a newborn, I downloaded TikTok randomly and just started playing around and incorporating these topics. And I got a lot of feedback, mainly negative back then, but it's what I wanted to talk about. So I kept going, and yeah, it's turned into, I guess, what many would call like advocacy work for, children and their right to privacy and safety online.
Right. And I appreciate all of that. So, we talk, you said sharenting, which I'm really glad that you use that term. So kind of explain to us like what that is and why, and just at the sharenting level, why that can be kind of detrimental to our kids.
Sharenting is a blend of sharing and parenting, and it's referred to on what we're doing in the digital world, how we are sharing our children on these social media platforms and or like in, blogging and things like that, and just how we discuss our children online. And anyone can do it. Anyone can participate in it, right? It's not just the family bloggers and the influencers and the momfluencers that we often see and idolize on social media. Sometimes it's, your best friend or your sister-in-law. We can all partake in oversharing our children online, and that can be very concerning for their right to privacy, their right to informed consent, their digital safety. And there's a lot parents need to consider before they share online. And I would highly suggest not participating in sharenting and prioritizing the privacy of your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I'm older than the internet. And so like I was like the first to get the MySpace and then the Facebook and
Yeah,
then all these
yeah,
things that have come in.
yeah.
So I feel like there's just been this massive learning curve that the
Hmm.
first generation of, social media users have come up with and now we're seeing effects of things that we just never really ever thought about before. I know I didn't.
100%. Like these conversations in regard to, sharenting and child exploitation, like they didn't really start cropping up until like recently. Like occasionally you can look back and find, a New York Times article in like the mid 2010s about it. But overall, these conversations are like relatively new. And I also am, the age of the internet. I didn't have Facebook until, I was 21 in college. And there's a part of me that wishes that for my children, that they can be much older before they start their journey online and establishing their digital footprint. Because even at the age of 21, while I'm technically an adult, I'm sure if I scroll back to Facebook, there's things that like I shouldn't have been saying or sharing and I wouldn't be proud of right now. And now you think that parents are creating a digital footprint for their children that they have no say in. They're going to inherit this without the ability to, remove it from the internet. And then they're starting their digital footprint at very young ages too, which is really concerning when, your brain's not developed until you're 25 and you could be saying really inappropriate things or sharing inappropriate photos online and you're prepubescent years or your teens. It's a lot. It's a lot for parents to navigate, and I recognize that.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. So help us, because I think a lot of us, as parents, we do share about our kids, like, funny stuff and things like that. But when does sharenting cross the line into child exploitation?
That's a great question. For me, I always say it crosses the line when your kids become your content, when your kids are no longer just occasionally featured in your content, that your account is primarily and sometimes solely based around your children. And on top of that, when you start to monetize your content,
Mm,
that for me would be child exploitation.
right. Yeah, and that's one of those things I don't think I ever would have thought about, having the secure dad and now transitioning to the secure family podcast. The only thing that I really ever share about my son is like when he absolutely burns me in a conversation, like he says something hilarious and then it's just text. Like I don't
Yeah.
post pictures of him because like I realize you and I grew up in this age where we got to say who we were when we got to college, when we got our
Yes.
first job, and them already having a digital footprint that they really didn't have a control over really just does not seem fair.
No, it doesn't seem fair to me. And I don't preach, for me, I recognize there's some nuance and I recognize that it's not black and white. And therefore, that's why I've always said I'm not trying to rid children of the internet. I just want parents to pull way back and be really mindful with what they share, sharing a birthday pic or one photo from family vacation is extremely different than some influencers and family bloggers are doing in regard to vlogging a whole vacation all day every day and monetizing it and pictures of this and that and all the intimate stories and the private details. And it's it just feels like such an invasion of a human's right to privacy and autonomy, especially when we know that what we put out in this digital world, it matters. It
Yeah,
matters.
absolutely. Yeah, so now like cuz we have that and it's out there. And so we have
Mhm.
had this rise of what we're calling kid influencers.
Yes.
And so, how does this child exploitation on the internet, on social media influence how people think about their own lives and childhood just like in general? How has this changed the game, not just for the family that's involved, but for the families that watch?
Yeah. So I think there's, some families have like commodified their children's childhood, right? They're monetizing off the human existence of their children and they are removing the inherent right to privacy and therefore sharing with the public some really intimate details about their life. Like the things I have seen, the stories I have been told, the things I get tagged in is extremely concerning. And I also think that it is sharing a very like materialistic approach to parenthood. A lot of it is about like all the things and all the stuff that these people have and what they get, right? And then the viewers, who are often children, believe this is the case, right? And also a lot of these family bloggers create these like fictitious storylines, right? There's lots of, like someone's breaking into my house and we have a stalker and, we were, you know, scared of this tornado, but the tornado was, like 100 miles away and they were never impacted or anything like that, right? But like these storylines they create that their young audience believes to be true, right? Like they don't know what is fact and fiction with these people. And so there's a lot of concerning things that these people are doing, but it's also concerning that especially young audiences are looking at these families thinking this is like normal and something to like idolize.
Right. Yeah. And that doesn't set a great expectation for one, how to interact in society now, but when they become the age of raising kids, like what does that look like for them? Because they've seen this skewed. It's like again for us, like we watched sitcoms that were scripted and we knew that they weren't real, but like these are real looking people in real
Yeah.
houses going through like real stuff. Like how is that going to affect this next generation, do you think, and how they deal with relationships and adulthood and growing up?
Oh, that's a loaded question, right? Because I think another problem with these types of family vlogs is also like the parent-child relationship is no longer strictly a parent-child relationship, right? Like the parents have turned into like producers and business managers. And now the child's actual existence, like how much of that is like real and authentic versus performative versus scripted, some might say, right? And I also think about like the element of technoference and this, digital device between the parent and the child and how that's going to affect them, right? These people must be spending, you do a podcast, you're on social media, you know how much time goes into
Oh yeah.
this, right?
Hmm.
Now imagine filming your family and creating 2 to 3 vlogs a week plus Insta stories on social media and things like that, right? I think that is going to have a very large impact on these children growing up because they have witnessed so much technoference in their life. And maybe that is also harming their relationship with their parents or understanding how to parent because they're so involved with these devices.
Right. Right. And, obviously having access to the devices leads to more of this stuff, and the algorithms build more of a profile on our
Mhm.
kids and what, content that they're going to be served. But, going back to talking about how the parents are producers now and like the kids, I guess, are just they're employees,
Yes.
and that seems like just like, what is the world like for them when they do put the phone down? What's it like when the cameras aren't on? And that's troubling to me for them, but also again troubling for me for being on the outside of it, watching these folks kind of exploit themselves.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think oftentimes, like, because some of these children are literally born into this, like their birth is on YouTube, like they are born into this. So they don't know life without a camera pointed at them. They don't know life without these devices facing them and this barrier always being between them and their parent, right? So are they even growing up and learning how to be like autonomous individuals, or are they learning how to be little performers because they know that if like the parent has the camera out, there is like an expectation that something maybe funny has to be said or like emotions have to be shared? And are they giving the parents and, subsequently the viewers what they want to see, even though that's not authentically who they are or what they're feeling in that moment, because they're being taught that every moment of their life is content and possibly a performance.
Right. I remember watching, I don't remember the kid's name, but he was the kid that always opened toys and things like that.
Ryan's World.
Yeah, and I remember
Yeah.
like my son we stumbled onto that, I think, during the pandemic. And I just remember watching it and like, like the reward system that the brain has set up and those chemicals that happen. Like here's this kid, he's just opening new stuff over and over and over again for years. Like how
Mhm.
does that like physically like take a toll on you? What brings you joy now after seeing all that sort of stuff? That's like the physiological changes there are concerning too.
I love that you mentioned that. And I also like it goes into that happening with Ryan, but also his little audience thinking that this is normal to get like toys every day or every week and opening them. And then you can go deeper into it that, he's opening toys, but he's advertising, right? Kids can't separate that. They don't know that they're being advertised to, but they are when he's opening, Lego sets, whether it's a paid ad for him or not, he's still advertising a product to his young audience who don't know that they are being marketed to,
Right.
right? There are so many, channels to explore when we're discussing these topics. It can be almost overwhelming when you really dive into it and start thinking about it.
Right. I know that, some we can look at certain cases and we realize that parents have crossed a line. They've done something that they very much shouldn't have.
Mhm.
What But I'm sure the intent didn't start that way. You know, like they just wanted to do something fun and it kind of got out of control.
Yeah, I would like to think that parents are sharing these images and videos on social media in like a malicious fashion,
Hmm.
right? I would like to
Right.
think that these are parents who have not done their due diligence in this world. Like, think about how many books and blogs and things you read before you became a parent, right? Or during the baby years or the toddler years and things like that. You know, there's sleeping, the napping, the potty training, right? This wealth of information that you were trying to absorb. I think that not enough people are doing, not enough soon to be parents are doing that in regard to the digital world and how this has changed in the world in which we are bringing up these children, right? And therefore, it is a lack of information and education in regard to the topic versus like any malicious intent in sharing. Like maybe they just haven't really thought about the long-term consequences or repercussions, right? Because
Very true.
they haven't really been talked about until recently.
Right. And that's why I'm glad that you are talking about this and you're bringing it to the forefront of and hopefully will help people make better decisions in the future. And one more thing that I want to talk about before we start, you know, kind of sharing what we can do to kind of help
Yep.
prevent this stuff. But, you know, we take a look at, let's just say there's a kid influencer who, you know, all he did was, you know, look at Matchbox cars and play with that as an example. Well, kids will watch these videos for years and years and years, and they'll think that they have some sort of a relationship with the kid who's
Mm-hmm.
on the other side of the camera who they've never met. They may never even been in the same state before. But I mean, I think when you start to look at how kids create and form relationships, having a relationship through YouTube is not good for anybody.
Well, that it's a parasocial relationship, right? It's a one-sided relationship that the viewer perceives they have with the creator. And I have actually seen it so much in regard to adults and children, especially on the TikTok app, where adults are referring to other people's children with whom they have no relationship to as their aunties and their cousins. And, you know, I need to see quote unquote my babies today and things. There have been some very bizarre situations in which parasocial relationships have formed. And that's very concerning. And it also makes me think about the children, as you mentioned, like the kid influencers growing up in the public eye and the kids potentially who are watching them developing these relationships and or the adults, but as they grow up, will their viewer feel like they are entitled to more from this individual because
Right.
they were put online by their parents or whatnot? Or there's a lot of young girl influencers, kid influencers who are sadly followed by a large adult male population. When they get their own social media, will they be inundated by creeps, like messages about, you know, like I watched you grow up and I like these, right? It just, again, it feels like it snowballs and we don't exactly know what's going to happen. But for me, it's really concerning to think that strangers would feel like they had access, be entitled to access, or have intimate information about my children as they
Yeah.
grow up.
Yeah, that's just got red flags all over it for
All
me when you
over
say
it.
it like that. You actually shared in a reel not that long ago that there are parents out there who will actually offer like a subscription
Mhm.
through like Instagram or something that people can actually buy content, like behind the
Yeah.
scenes content about their kids. Like,
Yeah.
what are they
What is
sharing?
that?
What is that?
So I think I discovered this in 2022 that there was a group of children, young girls who are being exploited by their parents online, mainly in like the cheer, dance, like wannabe actress world. And I first saw because I found a bunch of photos via a private website that parents were selling, like photo packs of their little girls in dance wear and bathing suits that people could purchase, which was red flags to
Oh
me.
yeah.
And then the more I dove into it, I realized that parents were doing this on Instagram, that there is a subscription button that was available on many of these accounts, and it was allowing individuals to subscribe to more content, whether that be videos, images, chats of little girls. And I feel very fortunate that many publications have picked this up. Four Corners Australia did an expose on it. The New York Times has done a great job covering it. But yes, parents are selling exclusive access to their children via subscription-based platforms, sometimes on meta platforms. But yeah, if you haven't looked at the New York Times pieces in regard to those, they've done an excellent job in covering the topics from various sides and points of views. And I just really commend them for doing that. Because
That's good.
I wasn't aware, and when I started talking about it, people were just shocked. It's insane to think we live in a society where parents who are supposed to protect their children are selling photos and videos of them, oftentimes in very limited clothing, to strangers online. I don't know how we got here.
I agree. I don't know how we got here either. Like, I mean, because this parents exploiting their children has happened on some very, very small level in our society for a long time.
Yeah, definitely.
But to see it at the forefront like this is, it's jaw dropping. I don't get it. I don't understand why anybody would think that this is remotely a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. And oftentimes when I talk about child exploitation as it relates to social media in regard to like back to family vloggers and momfluencers and things like that, people often say like, well, what's the difference between, that and child actors? Like you want to ban kids from the entertainment industry and things like that. And I don't think enough people know that it wasn't until last year in America that the first law was enacted in Illinois to protect the income that these children are making. However, even though it is a great first step in protecting the income these children are generating, there's no protections for their privacy, right? There's no right to be forgotten when they're 18 and everything can be removed and things like that. So in my opinion, we're moving in the right direction. These laws are great. One's being enacted in California this year, Minnesota. Minnesota is actually doing more. But it's still not enough to protect their digital footprint and their right to privacy, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those situations where something really bad has to happen, where we get worldwide some huge story, and that is going to be the thing that wakes people up. And I'm glad that we're moving in the right direction, but I think it's going to take something really, really bad to really wake folks up to what's going on.
Well, I think if you're looking for two bad stories, just off the top of my head, I could name more, but I'll just start with the two popular ones. Look into Ruby Franke, the 8 Passengers saga. Her daughter, Sherry Franke, just wrote a book about her experience as the child of a family vlogger. It's called The House of My Mother, and that was very eye-opening. And is essentially the first child to speak out against the practice and share her experience. So if anyone's interested, I suggest they look into that story. And her mother has been accused. No, not accused. She has been convicted of child abuse in the state of Utah in late 2023. And just this morning, I received an article. There was accusations from an influencer mom in Australia that she was drugging her infant daughter to make her sicker, to enlist donations via GoFundMe, and also increase her social media presence. And she was just arrested this morning in Australia. So it looks like she is guilty of literally making her infant daughter sick for money in social media clout. It's extremely disturbing. So some of these stories are already happening.
Yeah. Wow.
I know.
Wow. That is,
Hard to, it's hard to imagine that a mother is so addicted to online popularity that they would poison their own child to gain social media influence, clout, whatever you want to call it, and get donations online. It's hard to wrap your head around, but all of these stories combined, like it has to lead to a shift. It has to lead to a shift. At some point, our morals and our ethics have to um, take hold and say, this isn't right. This just isn't right.
yeah, and I agree. Well, before we, completely just fall down the hill of, despair here,
I know.
um, what are some things that what are some boundaries that, parents can set up to protect their kids' privacy
Yep.
while still maintaining a social, media presence? What's that balance? What's a healthy
Okay.
balance look like?
So I think the best thing parents can do in this digital world, and especially as AI evolves, is private your account. Nothing is private on social media, but you have a better chance of maintaining privacy if you don't hold a public account. So make sure you have privacy settings. And when you have privacy settings, make sure that it is people who you know and trust who are following you. Because a lot of times people will say to me, well, my account's private, it's fine. And I'm like, you have 1,500 people following you. Like that's not private. People can still download things and record things or take that story and go share it elsewhere. So privacy is so key in 2025 moving forward. And also just thinking about what you share. There are some like absolute no-nos, private or public, kids naked, semi-naked, tub, potty training, really vulnerable or low moments, like them like melting down and having emotional outbursts and things like that. Kids should be able to express those emotions and know that we're still respecting their privacy and we're not sharing it with other people. Ask before you post or share a story. Is pardon me.
Mhm.
Ask before you post or share a story. Is there any chance my child will be embarrassed by this later in life? If there is any chance, a hint that they will be, don't share it. Don't share it. And I say to parents regularly, save that story, save that video, share it with them when they're older. And if they want to share it and go viral, then let them. But it won't be on you if it goes viral and ends up in all the wrong places. So those are a few key things for parents.
Right, and you make the point of AI, which I think just brings in a whole new aspect to how
Yes.
social media in general is going to work, what we can and cannot believe. But people can use AI to reimagine what kids would look like in certain
Mm-hmm.
situations without, we'll just
Yep.
leave it at that. But like when looking at AI and specifically how this is helping. Like you're saying, the whole private account, if it's not out there to be seen, to be manipulated, you're going to be ahead of the game.
Yeah, you're gonna be ahead of the game. Now, that's not to say I haven't heard some stories about things that have happened to private accounts, because it does. Personally, I'm still a fan of like texting your photos, sending an email. There are also some more secure apps that parents can download and then invite, their immediate family and friends to
Mhm.
those. And then your images and stuff aren't on social media. Obviously, read the privacy settings and things like that. But for me, I just text the photo, everyone in my family loves my children, but it doesn't necessarily benefit anyone's life seeing them every day in every capacity or things
Right.
like that. And one more thing I wanted to share was do not share personal identifiable information about your children. Their full
Agreed.
legal
Yes.
names, their full birthdays, be mindful of where you're taking pictures. The amount of parents I see like post their home address and things like that or their kids' school and things like that is crazy. And people always think about predators, which they should, but think identity theft, right? Barclays back in the day, a few years ago, suggested that 30% of all identity theft moving forward will be because parents shared too much information online.
Yeah.
And can you imagine hitting 18 and having, your credit score already, wiped, and accounts and your name and things like that just because parents overshared online? Like, it's really concerning, and sadly it will happen.
Right. I advocate that parents actually freeze their children's credit so that it can't be used because they're not using it
Oh,
anyway till they're
love it.
18. Yeah, but like I see these birth announcements and it's this cute, precious little baby. And then there's like the letter board that gives their full name, their weight, their date of birth, where they
Everything.
were born. And it's just like, I, as a good person, know that you could do horrible things with this information.
Yeah.
Imagine what somebody who, yeah. And, they're just excited. They're happy. And that's why I like your whole text chain idea. Because
Yeah.
I suggest to people when they go to like on vacation, instead of posting in real time on social media, letting people know that you're not at home to protect your house,
Yeah.
you can still share in a text message with your family and friends that will still be able to kind of enjoy the trip with you, and you can show all the fun things that you're doing. So I like that. If you really feel like you need to share something about your kids, put it in text, put it in a certain app so that way it's just not public or doesn't belong to Meta or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also the last thing I want to mention that I'm digging deeper into this year, and we mentioned technoference, is just for all of us to put our phones down more in front of our kids,
Yeah.
turn the computer off. I think there is going to be really big effects down the road for our children because of our relationship to, social media and our screens. So I just implore parents at the beginning of the year to just be more mindful with your screen time, how often you have your phone out in front of your kids, how often it's in your hand, because they are noticing. They are
Oh yeah,
noticing.
for sure. Like my son has a phone. He has a Trumi phone, and so like I noticed like the other night we were watching a show and he was also playing a game that I approved on his phone.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, you should really be sitting here watching TV. And I realized my own phone is in my own hand doing the
I know.
exact same thing. And I'm like,
Crazy.
okay, so if I want him to put the phone down,
Yep.
I've also got to put the phone down.
Yeah, we have to model behavior, right? We want to model what we want our kids to do. So, we have to be mindful. Like if you're taking your phone in your bedroom or your
Mhm.
bathroom and things like that, like that's the number one thing I always tell parents: don't let the phones and the screens go into
Yes.
bedrooms and bathrooms, right? That's
Right.
where all of
Agreed.
the things happen. So if we can be better at that, we're modeling that. We're not doing it. We're not doing it either. You can always pull the adult card because, we are the adults. Things are a little different.
Right.
But
Right.
it's just about modeling behavior. Are you picking up your phone while you're driving a car? Do you want your kid to do that? You don't. So we shouldn't. We should stop doing all the videos on the TikTok while driving and things like that, because we don't want our children to do that. Right. And we're
Yeah.
going to tell them not to do that. But sadly, some of us are doing that. So that's the last thing, would be just all of us being more mindful of the amount of time we're spending on our screens in front of our children.
Absolutely. So, Sarah, as we wrap up here, we just started 2025,
Mhm.
looking at child exploitation and social media. What do you think are going to be the big stories of this year? Or do you feel like something's coming? Do you have a vibe about how things are going to go? How are you feeling about this new year?
I always feel optimistic. Every year I've been talking about these subjects since 2021, and every year I find parents becoming more educated. I see family bloggers stating that they're not going to be family vlogging anymore, influencers not putting their children online. I remain optimistic that there is a shift in society in which parents are going to prioritize their children's right to privacy, informed consent, and digital safety. And, a big one is it'll be interesting to see what happens with TikTok in
True.
America, right? That's just days away. And if it actually does go away, that's a massive platform that just shut down a lot of people who were exploiting their children. So things are changing. Things are changing. And I would like to hope they're changing for the better.
You know, Sarah, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to hope that like the conversations we're having right now are going to help people. And even though probably the folks that are listening to us, they're not exploiting their kids online at
Yeah.
all, but hopefully they can educate other people that are in their sphere of influence as to what this is and what's going on. So I appreciate our talk that we've had today. I've learned a lot from you. Where can people find out more about you and your mission?
Yeah, I'm on the main social media platform. So I'm Canadian also, so I'll be on TikTok.
You'll be on
Then
TikTok. I
I'll
won't.
be on TikTok. Then you can find me under mom.uncharted on TikTok, Instagram, as well as YouTube. I also have a website called kidsarenotcontent.com that seeks to inform parents on sharenting and keeping their kids safe online and child exploitation and the laws that are cropping up across the states and internationally. So you can check that out for more information on these topics.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. God bless you and what you're going to do this year.
Thanks for having me, Andy. I really appreciate the conversation.